Is there a point that you believe we should start teaching these kids how to cope with anxiety, depression, stress, cyberbullying, these issues as part of the curriculum in school?
Definitely. I mean, I think, cognitive behavioral therapy, even though I practice from an eclectic, point of view, I believe that cognitive behavioral therapy is the most researched therapy. It's probably the easiest to understand and to put into practice because it's very, systematic in terms of how it works. But to change your thinking about something and not just act on your feeling, but to actually check it, make sure that it's not distorted in some way, hear what some other, possibilities are, and start to really look at, is this just me and the way that I feel? Is this something that, like you said, is something that needs to be pursued and dealt with? And I think that we just need to teach our children how to gain skills to cope with adversity, prejudice, bullying, all of these things, being offended, and that it doesn't make it right, but it teaches them how to cope with it, whether that's making the complaint or whether that's dealing with it, onto themselves or whether it's addressing it or whatever it is. I think to give them some skills other than just call somebody out on social media and try to get them canceled.
I had the opportunity to testify before a bipartisan committee of Congress on the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And it was dealing with, or how to deal with, cyberbullying. One of the things that I heard the administration say is that this is not our job. Our job is to educate these kids at school because cyberbullying is taking place off campus, not on campus. So that's not our job. That's the job of the parent. I said, you need to make it your job
Mhm.
because you have access to these kids 40% of their waking hours. Most of these relationships are formed at school, and there was a time when you could leave school and leave the bully behind. The bullying took place on the bus dock, it took place behind the gym, it took place in the cafeteria, and when the student went home, they were safe. Now, the cyberbully can follow them home, and the parent thinks they're back there in their bedroom doing their homework when in fact they're on some chat group or whatever from school with people saying, "We hate you, you're ugly, kill yourself." And too often, it has happened that they go back there and find their child, boy or girl, 7th or 8th grade, hanging themselves in their closet, dead. I've had many a story that I've had to do on the show where they've shot themselves or hung themselves. And I'll never forget one mother, not 50 feet from here, her son shot himself in the face.
It started with the name calling. Brandon had used a 357 Magnum. When I saw him, the first thought that went through my mind is he looks on the outside now like he has felt on the inside for so long.
These were all kids from school saying terrible things to him on the internet. And I think, again, the schools can help so much if we can teach kids the early warning signs of anxiety, depression, stress, learned helplessness, interpersonal violence. You get these kids in 7th or 8th grade and they get in these relationships and think, oh my God, I'm loved so much because he's calling me 50 times an hour. They don't realize This is early warning signs of abuse here. You need to spot this and recognize it, and how to deal with a bully, how to defuse a bullying situation, bystander responsibilities when there are bullying situations, how to cope with these things. And it's not going to happen in the schools until you put the money behind it so it becomes part of the curriculum. You got to set aside 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, or something like that to teach them the basic tenets of recognizing these red flags and what to do about it when they see it. And cognitive behavioral therapy, to me, seems like a very understandable intervention, short-term intervention strategy that will work with kids at virtually any age.
I agree. I also think that, what you just talked about is so important because it also identifies, if you have it out there in the schools, it identifies for teachers and administrators what the problems are, right? Because so much of this is in secret and without their knowledge. And so kids want to vent, they want to talk about things. And I know when I was a social worker in school, in a school setting, public school, um, I would have, you know, a lot of kids come to my office and have lunch with me, and we would just sit and chat, and I would find out a lot in that hour lunch period about what was going on, and then but I was only one person, and I was a social worker at the time and a minority in the school, and, you know, they don't wanna hear the problems, they don't really want to hear it. So I think if universally we did this in schools and it was just part of the curriculum, that would be amazing.
Yeah, if they can just teach kids just some of the basic tenets of cognitive behavior therapy, how to reframe their internal dialogue. Don't assume you can read the minds of the person that you're dealing with. Don't assume that you can predict the future. Don't catastrophize. Don't label. Don't discount positives about yourself. Learn to accept compliments from other people. Stop negative filtering. All of these things, and teach them the 4 criteria for a rational thought so they can test their thinking if they don't have the wherewithal to go talk to somebody. All the different things can make a huge difference.
And we don't know when our thoughts are distorted either.
No,
So
not unless you
unless
test them.
yeah, exactly.
Get them, if nothing else, to stop playing the what if game
Mm.
and realize, let's live in the moment and get through. There are so many important things they can teach them. I think if we would start doing some of these things instead of coddling these kids, I think we would have a much better chance of preparing them for life and them succeeding. But that's not going to happen unless you put money and time behind it. And they did some of that in the last reauthorization after we had the hearings, but that was at elementary and secondary level. We'll see how much difference it makes. But now the pendulum seems to have swung the other way. So I think I speak for Dina Mannion as well as myself. We're not here to discount anybody's experience in any way, in anything. There are legitimate traumas, no question about it. We're not saying that. There are triggers that people can walk right into and have a genuine bad response. We're just saying that trigger's gotten to be a hair trigger. And real trauma is being lost in hypersensitivity with so many things that are being labeled as traumatic that really don't qualify as trauma. And if everybody can complain about anything that makes them even moderately uncomfortable, rather than learning to deal with that discomfort so they can take it in stride, they're going to have a rough ride when they get out of college. And college should prepare people to deal with the real world.